Hey, Matthew here from Fiberglasssupply.com. We are doing another longboard fin box repair job. Why so many? Well, a lot of people break them. And two, every time we do one, you can see different parts of it. And sometimes we do them a little different. And you can figure out what works best for you. The other reason is this board is a gloss and polish, and we have not done a repair job on a gloss and polish board yet. And so you're going to see how that differs at the end and what we do to finish that off. So enjoy the video, and thanks for watching.
So I'm looking at this here as I'm getting ready to take it out, and you know what? Somebody took a screwdriver and tried to pry out this broken box. And now they've created more work because it damaged these areas. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to route out the old fin box. We're using a Porter cable router here with a vacuum jig, so there's vacuum holding that jig to the board so it doesn't move around. Really nice to have that for ding repair. And the bit we're using in here is a single flute, what's called an O flute bit. It has an upcut. It's designed for cutting plastic, so it gives us really nice chips, cuts really cleanly, unlike a regular standard 2-flute straight bit. So we're going to route that out about 1/8 to 1/4 inch per pass until we've worked all the way through that old box. And once we've got that done, we're going to take the jig off, clean out our hole. Usually before I take the jig off, I double check to make sure my hole is deep enough, but we've got a nice clean hole here. There is a little bit of resin left stuck to the side, but we checked it and it was stuck really well. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to check the fit of the box. We want about 1/16 of an inch all the way around it, and so the resin can come out so that we know we've got good glue between the box and the board. Once we've done that, we're going to mask off so any resin that we spill doesn't get on the board and create extra work for us. So first thing we're doing before we glue that box in is we're going to wipe down the box with some solvent to remove any mold release from the molding process when they made the box. We've mixed up a resin putty. It consists of, in this case, polyester resin with Cabasil for a thickener and black pigment to give it some color. We're going to smear that into the box hole, and then we're also going to butter the box up and push it in place. We want to make sure that we've got enough resin that we're glued all the way around, that we don't have any voids or bubbles. We also want to make sure that once we've got that box seated, that we've got a bead of resin around the top edge of that box. Now you'll see here in a minute that we're going to wipe off excess resin that squeezes out, but what you really can't see in this video is we are trying to leave a little bead right around that top edge, because what happens is as the resin cures, it shrinks, and if we wiped it right flush to the edge, it would shrink below the edge, and then we'd have a little divot around the box, and we don't want that. So I'm setting that box there. Sometimes it does take quite a bit of pressure. It helps if you just kind of push on it slowly but firmly and let that give some time for that resin to squeeze out so the box doesn't kind of pop back up on you. So we've removed the excess resin and let the resin cure. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sand that box flush to the level of the board. We're using a grinder here with an 80 grit disc on it. A 60 grit disc would work as well. Much rougher than that, and you run the risk of putting big scratches in the board if you actually accidentally hit the top of the board. So we're going to run that grinder nice and smooth. Long passes, don't stay in one spot for too long. If you do that, what will happen is it melts the plastic of the fin box and causes issues that way. So we've worked that down, and the other nice thing about having that tape on there is it gives you kind of a visual indicator and protects you from hitting the board with the rough grit on the grinder. So now we're going to remove that masking. We'll get off the masking residue if we need to with some solvent and a rag, and we're going to mask a little bit bigger area. And what we're going to do on this board is we're going to put a fiberglass patch over that box to help reinforce it. It is a better way to put a fin box in. Most fin boxes, you'll notice, have some discoloration around the front edge and cracking, and this helps prevent that because there's actually a fiberglass cap over the box. So what we're doing to prepare that area is we've masked it off so we don't accidentally sand too far, and then we're coming in with some 120 grit and we're sanding the box, completely flush now with the board and that area around it so that the fiberglass cap that we're about to apply will stick to it. We're going to remove that tape because we've sanded into it, and if we left it like that and put the glass cap on there, we would end up with some issues where the masking tape adhesive that we sanded into gets all gunked up. So we're cleaning that off, and now we're going to mask that back out, and we're going to mask with some paper to prevent any resin from getting on the board where we don't want it. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to apply fiberglass cap. We're going to do 4 layers of 4 ounce. And what I want to do is wet that out off the board and then put it on the board. And the reason for that, if I do it that way, I won't get excess resin go into the box. Now I could tape off the opening of the box, but the problem with doing that is that I've got tape that's out on the flange of the box or out, on the box edge that I've got to cut the fiberglass back and get that out. So if by wetting this out off the board and bringing it on, I don't need to actually put anything over that box opening, and it makes it easier when I go to route it and open that up later. So we've got that patch there on a piece of plastic. Just pour some resin on it. We'll work it back and forth, maybe flip the whole patch over and work it from the other side until it's completely saturated and clear. And then we'll also work off the excess resin and leave it on that piece of plastic there. That way we've got, what we end up with is just a fiberglass patch that only has the resin in it that we need and no extra. We'll bring that over, drop it on the board and just smooth it out. In this case we'll use a squeegee to get any air bubbles out from below. We could also use a bubble roller if you happen to have one of those. If you don't, we do sell them. And we'll get that excess out. And the other thing we're going to do here, instead of waiting and hot coating it with another layer of resin, is we're going to put a piece of peel ply over it. The peel ply helps everything lay flat, smooths down the edges where the fiberglass ends, and then once that resin's cured, we'll just pull the peel ply off as you see here. Next, we're going to sand and feather that cap into the rest of the board. So we're not really trying to sand the middle as much as we're just trying to blend the edges of that cap into the surrounding board. And we want to go most of the way with that masking on there, and then we'll remove that masking and blend to the board level. Now in this particular board, it is a gloss and polish. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put some gloss resin on, and in this case, because we're doing that, we're going to sand out a little bit bigger area past that patch to apply the gloss resin. In this case, we've got some pin lines that act as a visual break, so we're actually going to go all the way up to the pin lines with our gloss patch, and we're going to take it maybe a little higher, about right there, yeah, and apply that gloss resin. So the gloss resin is a separate resin that cures harder and is able to be buffed out quite nicely. And so we've got that patch area taped off, and now we're applying our gloss resin, just getting out some hairs from the brush that fell out there. And we use the same technique as when we're hot coating. The other thing about the gloss resin is it goes on real thin, and so you can catalyze it pretty hot. 3% is what I typically do, and you shouldn't run into any problems at that rate, especially at just regular room temperature. Once that gloss resin is cured, we're going to come back in, and you can do this either wet, you can do it with a random marble, you can do it with a power pad and sandpaper, but we're going to start usually around 220 and work our way up to 600 to 800 before we buff it. Once we've got that sanded out, then we're going to come in with the buffer like we're doing here and a little bit of surfboard polish and buff that up and get a nice shine on it. It may take a couple of passes. In this case, I actually had a brand new pad, which I think takes a little bit more because the pad soaks up some of the compound than a used pad takes. Once we've got that buffed up, we're opening up the fin box, And we could have actually opened that up before we buffed. You know, you can go either way there. But we're using a Dremel with a carbide burr bit to open that up. And it's a Ultra Tool 222 fiberglass router bit, 1/8 inch. And if you got any questions about those, contact us. And we're just going to open that up. And then I'm coming in here with some 220 and sanding back that edge. So I want to make sure that edge of the fiberglass is rolled back a little bit. So when I put a fin in and out, it doesn't catch. And that's kind of what I'm looking for here as I test fit the fin. It's always a good idea to test fit the fin anyway. You know, been doing this for 20 plus years, and usually the fins aren't an issue, but I actually have run into a couple fins where the base was wider than the box and we had to sand the fin down, or something else was kind of off. The last thing you saw there is we drilled the hole for the leash, and now we're just checking it out. Looks good. We'll give the customer a call and they'll come get their board and go surfing. Thanks for watching.